Chapter 2. As much as I hate to admit it, Jack was right. Things got unimaginably weird. That first night was oddly uneventful. We stayed up drinking and talking. Turns out Paula is a tattoo artist, and Jack was a former minor league pitcher. We got completely sloshed that first night, and I woke up the next morning on my bedroom floor. When I went downstairs, Jack was still passed out on the couch. I stood there for a second trying to remember what happened, but I kept drawing a blank. I headed to the kitchen to put on some coffee. Before I could get there, I heard Paula calling me from upstairs.
Hey Cal, would you mind coming here for a second?
When I got to her door, she was hiding behind it and peeking out at me. From what I could tell, she was naked. She smiled and gave me a look that made me nervous in a good way.
Do you have any towels? I forgot mine.
A part of me wished she would have invited me in. But I just nodded and went to go get one from my room. When I got back, the door was open and she was gone. Hey Paula, I brought you a couple of towels. I'll leave them here on the bed. Stepping into her room, I could hear the shower running, so I dropped the towels and turned to walk out. I was almost to the hall when the bathroom door opened, and there she was. It was only for a second, but I saw every inch of her. Damn, she was amazing. Blushing, she quickly slammed the door and apologized. I think I was more embarrassed than she was. I made an O face, and I'm sure she saw. The second I was back in the hall, I had to smile a little to myself. That was the best thing I'd seen in a long time. Making a mental note of it, I started down the hall. Once I was back in the kitchen, Jack came staggering in. Jesus, Greenie, you sure know how to party. So, did you get any last night? I saw how you two were looking at each other. Really, I didn't know what he was talking about. The last thing I remembered was getting my ass kicked at Mortal Kombat. Listening to him laugh, I turned to ask what he was talking about, but there was no one there. Pouring myself a cup, I shook my head and walked back to the main room. When I got there, he was still asleep on the couch, as if he had never moved. Rubbing my eyes, looking around, I wondered for a second if I'd imagined it. After a minute or two, Paula came downstairs. She stopped halfway and looked in my direction. The expression on her face froze me in place. She wasn't looking at me. Following her gaze over to the window, I saw what she was looking at. Glenn and Christine were standing at the window. Their blood-stained faces were locked in a twisted grin that revealed cracked and chipped teeth. Glenn was missing his left eye, and Christine was missing her right. In the middle of both of their foreheads was a symbol that resembled a crudely carved goat's head. They were completely nude and covered in dried blood, dirt, and what looked like patches of mushrooms sprouting from their flesh. I hadn't noticed Jack waking up until he started talking. Well, shit, would you look at these two? Getting up off the couch, stretching, he chuckled and yelled out at them. Hey Glenn, your kid's stupid and your wife looks like a man. Fuck you! Flipping them off with both middle fingers, he turned to me and smiled. Is there any more coffee, Greenie? Speechless, I just nodded my head. Jack chuckled again and started strolling towards the kitchen. Paula was still watching Glenn and Christine, who hadn't budged. To be honest, so was I. Without taking my eyes off of them, I spoke up so she could hear me. Hey, what are we supposed to do about this? Are they just gonna stand there, or should we be worried? Paula didn't respond. When I glanced to look at her, she was going back to the stairs, shaking her head as she went up.
Nope, not doing that one. I'll be in my room.
Turning my attention back to the window, I had to smile. Christine really did look a little like a man. Jack came back with a cup of coffee in one hand, a bottle of bourbon in the other, and a slice of bread hanging out of his mouth. Placing the cup and the bottle on the table, he scarfed down the bread, then opened up the bottle and poured some into his coffee. He then turned on the television while taking a seat. Staring is rude, you know. If you ignore them, they go away, Greenie. I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. First, the little girl with the fairies, then the spiders and the monkey frogman things, and now this. Oh, and of course, the mirror world. And I almost forgot to mention, it was around here I started noticing strange flashes from outside, bright lights from an unseen source. From what I could quickly gather, I noticed that they flashed just before an event started. I put all of that together, and I was on the verge of having a meltdown. But before I could even begin to fly off the handle, Paula started screaming. I turned and bolted for the stairs, and as I reached the top, she came barreling out of her room. What's wrong? She stood there, silent, blankly staring at me. Her eyes were white, unblinking. She then screamed again, and a swarm of roaches came out of her throat. Not the little ones either. I'm talking about the big daddies that can fly. There were hundreds of them pouring out of her mouth, and I had nowhere else to go but downstairs. I stood there trying to wildly swat at them, and before I could even look at Paula, she plowed into me, sending us both tumbling down the stairs. When we hit the bottom, we were instantly engulfed by waves of insects. We both flailed around, screaming, trying to get them off of us. She was back to normal. I could feel them going into my eyes, up my nose, and poured into my mouth, drowning out my screams. Out of desperation, I bit down on them. I felt them crunch and squish between my teeth, filling my mouth with their thick, pasty guts, making me gag and retch as I fought to get them off of me. It took everything in me, but I got to my feet. The second I was upright, they all vanished. Paula was lying on the floor, gasping for air. I looked over to Jack. He had never gotten up off the couch. He sat there, laughing hysterically at the two of us. Holy crap! What's wrong with you two? Are you holding out on me? Whatever you're on, give old Jackie boy a hit. We were both lost in the moment, speechless, looking at him with blank expressions on our faces. My stomach lurched, and my mouth started to water. It felt like something was crawling up the back of my throat, and when I felt a tickling sensation on the roof of my mouth, a wave of bile and roaches poured out of my mouth, splattering on the floor. Jack, shocked by what he was seeing, yelped. What the shit is that? He jumped and started stomping on the roaches while they tried to skitter away. That's just nasty. Greenie, you mind telling us why the fuck you're eating roaches? Stepping over to help Paula up off the floor, I shook my head. We weren't eating them, they were trying to eat us. Didn't you see them? Jack looked at the two of us and took another sip of his coffee. No. All I saw was you two lunatics tumbling down the stairs, screaming like a couple of schoolgirls. What did I miss? I then heard that irritating clicking sound again. It was coming from all around me. You guys may not know this, but I'm a huge believer in instincts. And at that moment, something in my head told me to look up. And when I did, there was one of those toilet spiders about the size of a dinner plate, crawling across the ceiling, dropping quills with every movement.
Hell no! I don't do spiders. That's where I draw the damn line. I'm done. I want out. Where's the phone?
Paula blurted out. I grabbed her by the arm and rushed her to the downstairs bathroom and closed us both inside. Don't you remember the event announcement? The phones don't work until this is over. The look on her face was priceless. She ranted and cursed for the next few minutes, eventually calming down and taking a seat on the edge of the tub. The clicking was getting louder and louder, and I started hearing the bubbling sound coming from the toilet. The lid was up, but I quickly slammed it down and I sat on it to keep it closed.
What the hell was that?
She asked me as I rapidly flushed the toilet, hoping it would just wash the thing away. With a nervous smile, I told her it was another one of those spider things, and she responded by saying, "Great, now I'll never use the toilet again." It would have been funny if the thing in the toilet hadn't slammed against the lid and let out a series of clicking sounds that made my skin crawl. The creature violently thrashed and banged against the lid with all of its might. Then Paula did something that helped and made things extremely awkward for me. She quickly sat on my lap, helping to keep the seat closed. She was soft and warm. Her skin smelled like honey, and I was starting to have a rough time keeping my mind on the creepy toilet goblin spider thing. I'm pretty sure she noticed, but if she did, she wasn't saying anything about it. There were a few more attempts made by the creature to escape. Then I looked into the mirror, and there in the reflection, Paula and I seemed to be melting into each other, and we were both completely nude.
Are you seeing this? Oh my God, is that us?
She blurted out. The instant she said that, the image vanished and I pretended I hadn't seen it. It's what us? What are you talking about? She was just about to call bullshit when the light suddenly went out. Everything was pitch black. Despite the window in the bathroom, there was no light coming in. Then just as quickly as the lights went out, they came back on, and Jack opened the door. With a huge goofy grin on his face, he looked at us on the toilet and laughed. Didn't mean to interrupt your freaky bathroom session, but have you seen the man with no face? The bastard took my boots, and I want them back. He laughed and then turned around, but I grabbed his arm and pulled him in the bathroom, and I shut the door. Wait, you can't go out there. That thing is still running around. No, it's not. I stopped a mud hole in that thing's behind hours ago. Now I just have to kick Mr. No-Face's ass and get my boots back. I have to give it to the guy. If Zero Fucks Given was a person, it would be Jack. Paula and I weren't convinced there wasn't one of those things around the corner, and still in the toilet. Once we were both in the hall, the two of us peeked around the corner to see if anything happened. The coast was clear. Jack called out, "What the hell are you guys doing?"
The toilet, Jack!
I shouted back to him. "What about the toilet? There's nothing in here." At least it was gone. After that, Jack was walking through the house, yelling, "Hey, numbnuts! Get out here! Give me back my boots!" Making my way back to the front room, I spotted Jack digging through his bag. After a few seconds of him mumbling to himself, he pulled out a rock the size of a softball. Tossing it up in the air and catching it, he yelled out, "That does it!" Getting into a pitching stance, Jack slowly started scanning the room with his eyes. He yelled out, "Dude! duck!
I didn't. What happened next transpired so quickly my brain could barely process the information. In the blink of an eye, his arm came forward, and that rock he was holding zipped past my head. It smashed into something behind me with a meaty wet thwack. The sound of a body slumping to the floor seemed to take forever, but in reality, it was nearly instantaneous. Paula gasped and gagged, while Jack stood there with his chest poked out, grinning ear to ear.
Ha! Got him on the first try,
he bellowed while stepping past me. I turned around to see the same faceless man I'd seen with Glenn and Christine. The rock had completely obliterated the corner of his skull and embedded itself in the wound. Paula, shaking her head, made her way over to the bar. I watched Jack digging the rock out of the thing's skull, then cleaned it off on the rug.
That's the third one of those things I've seen, and all of them try to take my boots.
I couldn't breathe. My ears were ringing, and all I could think was, what the fuck did he mean? Looking at Jack still standing over the body, I cleared my throat and spoke out.
Are you insane? You could have killed me.
Jack smiled, tossing the rock up in the air and catching it.
Yeah, probably, but I didn't.
So what's the problem? I turned and stepped towards him. As I did, I punched him in the face. His reaction was instantly hitting me back. He connected with my nose, causing me to stagger back. Jack smiled and rubbed his chin.
Nice punch, Greeny. But don't do that again.
Paula, who had been at the bar this entire time, polished off her drink. Shaking her head and pouring another, she glanced at the two of us.
Are you guys done? We have an entire week of this shit and you two are already fighting. If we're going to make it through this event, you guys need to get your shit together.
Once all of the commotion had died down, we dragged the body into the hall closet under the stairs and went up to the game room. I was the last one up. While I was making sure the doors were locked, I glanced over at the window to see Christine and Glenn still standing there, watching me. Looking past them, I noticed the sky was clouded over and gray. I thought to myself maybe the rain would chase them off. It didn't. We had been in the game room for a while when the rain hit. We played a game of rock, paper, scissors to see who would be going down to grab a bottle from the bar. And of course, I lost. When I made it to the bar, the first thing I noticed was Christine was no longer standing at the window with Glenn.
Hey guys, Christine is gone. Check the windows to see if you can spot her.
A few moments later, Paula yelled down,
"She's not on this side."
A few seconds after that, Jack called out,
"I don't see her here either. Maybe she took off."
I went around checking all of the windows, but I didn't see her anywhere. Walking through the kitchen, I passed by the mystery door and stopped. Some of the nails were starting to come out.
No, shit, not now.
I rushed over and grabbed the hammer as quickly as I could and started pounding the nails back in place. But for every one I fixed, another would start easing out.
Guys, get down here now!
Paula and Jack came running in a few seconds later.
"What's happening now?"
she asked with an almost disgusted look on her face. Jack walked over to the fridge, opened it, and grabbed an apple.
"What's up, Greeny? Why are you doing that?"
I hadn't realized till that moment that I hadn't mentioned anything about the creature. There's something I forgot to mention. Taking a bite of his apple, Jack was cut off by the sound of someone racing across the back patio and slamming into the glass of the sliding doors. Everyone jumped and spun to see Christine peeling herself off the glass. Before anyone could say a word, there was a loud bang from the front door. Jack laughed. "Don't worry about them, they can't get in." "So, what the hell were you doing again, Greenie?" A nail popped out and pinged against the floor. The door creaked, and the center started to bulge out slowly. Stepping back, Paula shook her head. "What is that? What's behind that door?" I didn't have a name for the damn thing, but I knew if it got out, there was probably nothing we could do to stop it. Look, guys, there's this creature in the house, and I'm pretty sure it's trying to do something to me. Can you please just help me nail this door shut?" Nailing the door shut didn't help in the long run. It held up long enough for us to get to the stairs, but that was about it. We all heard the door open. Then that horrible grunting sound filled the room. "Run!" We all piled into the first bedroom we came to, then barricaded ourselves in, using every bit of furniture in the room. Paula paced around nervously, while Jack took a seat on the floor, stretching out, getting comfortable. Stopping for a moment, she looked at me and asked, "What is this? What the hell's out there, Cal?" Once I'd explained everything I knew about the creature and what happened the last time I saw it, they both laughed at me. Getting up off the floor, Jack smiled and shook his head. "Lube up and take one for the team, Greenie. We believe in you. Just close your eyes and go to your happy place." Paula chuckled from her spot near the window.
Everybody's scared the first time. Pretend it's a game.
They both got a good laugh out of it, but I didn't think it was all that funny. Fuck you and you. Besides, I'm pretty sure we're all fair game. Any one of us could be getting our hole punched by that The sound of glass shattering cut me off. Blood-curdling squeals erupted from the hall, followed by something crashing against the wall so hard it seemed to shake the whole house. The squealing turned to vicious snarling as that creature did battle with whatever was attacking it. We listened to them tearing at each other for a good 5 minutes until we heard them tumble down the stairs. Excitedly, Jack started tearing down the barricade, laughing, telling Paula and I he had to see what was going on. We both tried to stop him, but he didn't listen to us. The moment the door was clear, he bolted to the stairs, and for some dumb reason, we both followed him. We all stood there, frozen, watching what was going on at the bottom of the stairs. That ape-frog-looking thing came stumbling out of the television room. Its body was a shredded, bloody mess. Huge chunks of flesh had been torn away, exposing bone and gristle. It snarled and squealed when it saw us. Its long black tongue lapped out of its mouth, licking blood from its face, before it lunged in our direction. In a flash, something snatched it backwards, dragging it out of our sight. There was a series of vomit-worthy wet snaps and squishing sounds before it went silent. Then all we could hear was the pouring rain, and the occasional thud of either Glenn or Christine smacking against the house. I guess curiosity got the best of all of us, because we all took a step forward to see what happened at the same time. What we saw made my stomach turn. It was a colossal mess. The creature had been torn to pieces and splattered across most of the room. For a split second, I was back in my parents' house.
looking at what was left of my father. I blinked and things went back to normal. But out of the corner of my eye, I could have sworn I saw that little girl watching me from the other room.
Oh my god. What could have done this?
Paula asked while accidentally stepping on some broken glass. Jack shrugged his shoulders and I glanced back up at the stairs, noticing the mirror in the hall had been shattered. Looking around, I realized there was broken glass everywhere. "The mirror man," I muttered under my breath. Jack heard me and looked at me for a second. "So, the mirror man is on our side. Awesome. Hey mirror dude, thanks for the save," he yelled out, sloshing his way over to the bar. We cleaned all night, piling up the remains in the hall closet with the faceless man's body. During the cleanup, not realizing what he was grabbing, Jack picked up the creature's member, and when he did, Paula and I had a little fun at his expense. "Hey Jack, be sure to cup the balls." Realizing what he was holding, his face went pale and we burst out laughing. Gagging and dropping it on the floor, he heaved a little and headed for the stairs. Oh God, I think I'm gonna throw up." If the floor wouldn't have been coated with guts and glass, Paula and I would have been rolling on it laughing. Once Jack was gone, we finished cleaning, then poured drinks and went into the kitchen. That's when I realized something. I never got to put the coffee on, but there was a whole pot brewed. Who did it? I asked Paula about it and went to Jack. Neither of them said they had done it. I wanted to brush it off, but I couldn't. I told the others and they seemed oddly unbothered by it. When I asked why, they both started telling me what they had been going through since they'd been here. Meals would just appear in the oven, or packs of cigarettes would keep showing up. That's when I realized the alcohol bottles were constantly refilling. With as much as we'd been drinking, at least one of the bottles should have been empty by then. For the rest of the day, I paid attention to every detail, being sure to note any changes. It rained all day. It never let up. By the time the sun went down, the street was flooded. Water was almost up to the door, and there was no sign of it slowing down. We were all getting irritated by Glenn and Christine slamming at every window and door they could get to. They'd done it for so long that their bodies were bruised and gushing blood from new wounds. I was in the kitchen watching Christine repeatedly bang her head against the glass, leaving bloody streaks down her face. I'm not sure why I couldn't stop watching her, and there was something about her that was almost hypnotizing. I had to stop myself from opening the door at least 3 times before she suddenly stopped with her face pressed against the glass. She motioned to me, trying to get me to come closer, and for reasons I can't explain, I did. When I was close enough to reach out and touch the glass, she smiled and started saying something I didn't understand. She whispered. I had no clue what it meant, but apparently it was important enough for me to get right up to the glass to hear it. And as I began to mouth the words, Paula's voice snapped me out of it.
"What are you doing?"
I turned around to see her standing there in the doorway. I told her what Christine was saying, and she shook her head.
"I'm not sure listening to her is a great idea. Why don't you get away from there before something else happens today?"
Nodding my head, I stepped away from the window. Jack called out from the other room.
"Hey guys, the red sector's on television, and you're not gonna believe what's going on over there."
Paula and I both rushed into the main room to see what he was talking about. Who are they? I asked, staring at the screen. Paula started pointing them out one by one.
The old man sitting in the corner is Fred. He's nice. I think he told me he had been in the army or something like that.
Taking a good look at him, I noticed he had something in his lap. I couldn't tell at first what it was, but the longer I looked, I could make out the shape of a gun. What the fuck? Is that a gun in his lap? Where did he get that? I said and looked at Paula, and I could tell she was about to say the same thing. She went on pointing people out again.
The woman in the dress is Samantha. She's one of those uppity snob types. She acts like she comes from money, but I can tell she's not what she pretends to be. Something's not right about that chick.
We watched Samantha walk around the room, yelling to everyone in there. Lastly, Paula pointed out 4 people sitting on the couch.
That's the Hills, with their 2 daughters, Allison and Janice. I don't know anything about them. I only met them once, but they seem like okay people. I'm just surprised they are letting children be involved in all this. Doesn't make any sense.
We watched Samantha walking around the room for a few minutes until Fred finally got up from his chair. I guess she didn't notice because he stepped right up behind her, then shot her in the back of the head. Her lifeless body dropped to the floor and shattered like glass. The others were screaming at this point. There was no sound, but it didn't take a genius to figure that one out. Within seconds, another Samantha walked into the room and picked up exactly where the last one left off. The Hill family attempted to get up, then leave the room, only to have Fred point the gun at them, forcing them back into their seats. This went on for what seemed like hours. He must have killed at least 6 or 7 Samanthas before something else happened. Like I said before, there was no sound, but judging by their reactions, there was a sound coming from somewhere inside their house. Camera began cycling through different rooms, showing different feeds, until we saw it. A hole formed in the kitchen floor. As the tile sunk in, 3 of those ape frogmen things clawed their way out into the red sector one by one. They headed in different directions. I couldn't help but think there might be more than one of them in the house somewhere with us. Fred and the others barricaded the door, but eventually they got in. Fred managed to stop 2 of them before he ran out of bullets, and the 3rd one knocked him off his feet. When that happened, the Hill family made a break for it. Unfortunately for us, the camera didn't switch. The creature flipped old Fred onto his stomach and, well, how can I put this delicately? It mounted him. I couldn't watch. All I could hear was Paula saying,
"Oh no, God. Oh shit, oh wow. Oh, that's gross."
Jack, on the other hand, was laughing like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. I'll spare you the play-by-play commentary and tell you it ended with him yelling, "And boom goes the dynamite." When Paula told me it was over, I turned back to see the creature leaving the room. Fred's half-naked body lay on the floor, twitching. The camera thankfully switched till it found the Hill family climbing up into an attic access hatch that was located in one of the closets. Once they were all inside, the camera switched back to the kitchen in time to catch those things filing back into that hole. There was a flash of static, and the hole sealed up, like it had never been there. The feed then switched back to Fred. His body had swollen up about 3 times its normal size. At first we thought he was dead until his arms started moving. He clawed at his now swollen belly, tearing away fistfuls of flesh until he popped like a water balloon. What looked like 100 eggs spilled out of the shredded mass of what used to be Fred. In minutes, they were covering the floor and growing by the second. Then the feed stopped. Jack got up off the couch, laughing, and looked over at me. "Looks like you owe the mirror dude a beer when all this is over, Greenie. You could have ended up pregnant if it weren't for him saving, and I mean this, literally, your ass." "That could have been you." He then walked out of the room, whistling some tune. Smirking at me, Paula snickered a little, then got up and stretched.
"I'm going to my room. I've had about enough of this for one day. If you need me, Cal, you know where to find me."
I couldn't help but admire the view, and she walked away. "Don't judge me." As she turned the corner, she glanced back and caught me looking.
"I saw that,"
she called out, vanishing from sight. I smiled and put my head down, only to hear tapping from behind me. I'd forgotten all about Glenn, who was standing in the pouring rain, tapping a bloody finger on the glass. A few seconds later, Jack came strolling back in. We sat there drinking and talking for a while. He told me this story about being on some naked survival show, and once I'd had enough of his nonsense, I headed upstairs, back to the game room. I wound up playing House of the Dead until I got bored and decided to get some rest. I didn't sleep much that night. Tossing and turning, I couldn't help thinking about what happened to Fred and Eli, and if the hills were all right. I couldn't tell you how long I laid there listening to the rain, occasionally hearing Jack cursing at Glenn. I wondered if this was worth the trouble, and started doing the math in my head. Without the bonuses, I would clear a little over $250,000, if I could last the whole year. If everyone else quit or got eliminated, I could walk away from this set for life. With Fred and Eli gone, assuming they were paying the boy, I was already close to $1 million. If I wrote off Christine and Glenn, I would be looking at well over $1 million. Easy. If the hills were to be eliminated, that would put me at 2. Toss in Jack and Paula, plus the bonus loot, I might hit 4 or 5 by the end of all this. A sound brought me back to reality. A horrible, familiar, girlish giggle flooded my brain with flashbacks that instantly made me sit up in bed. Thunder rolled across the sky, and flashes of lightning illuminated my room with blue light, just long enough for me to catch sight of that little girl standing in the corner of my room. She giggled again, and every muscle in my body tensed up. That same strange, numb sensation washed over me while I watched that thing slowly stepping out of the shadows. Her darkened shape seemed to shift and grow gradually as she got closer. I tried to scream for help, but no words would come out. And as she stepped into the dim light filtering through my window, she wasn't a little girl anymore. It was Paula. She was naked and dripping water as if she'd just come out of the rain. Raising a finger to her lips, she shushed me and smiled before kissing me softly, gently making me lay back while she climbed on top of me. Even though my mind knew this wasn't real, my body couldn't tell the difference. I was captivated by her. Things progressed, and before long I found myself in the middle of something I was trying desperately to break free of. Okay, I'm lying. I wasn't trying all that hard. It was amazing, right up until she started choking me. And not in a good way either. I couldn't breathe. She forced me down. Then her mouth and eyes were filled with spiders suddenly. They all dropped down onto my face. They crawled all over me and got into my eyes. The room was suddenly darkened. I screamed and fought against the never-ending wave of arachnids, doing everything I could do to get off of the bed. I kicked Paula in the ribs and got her off of me. Suddenly the room flooded with light and I found myself looking at Jack and Paula, standing in the doorway.
What's going on in here? We could hear you screaming. Is everything all right?
Paula asked, looking around the room. Gasping for air and furiously trying to shake the feeling of spiders crawling all over me, I looked around, confused. I noticed a pair of wet footprints near the window and a spider scampering away, vanishing underneath the dresser. Shaking my head, I told them it was just a bad dream. Once they were gone, I wasn't going back to sleep. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the water rise around the house till I couldn't see the yard anymore. And by 3 a.m, water was starting to seep in under me. The kitchen phone started ringing. It took a while, but Jack finally answered and yelled up to me, "Hey Greenie, come get on the phone." I instantly got a bad feeling from this. Making my way downstairs to the kitchen, I noticed Jack was on the couch sleeping. When I got to the phone, it was on the hook. I picked it up, listening to a dial tone for a brief second, and then hung back up. As soon as I headed back to Jack to ask him what the hell was going on, the phone rang again. I stood there for a moment, staring at it, before picking it up. "Hello?" There was a burst of static, then a loud ping before a voice spoke over the line.
"Hello, Mr. Greer. The administration has approved the use of the Red Sector's blackout token. This means the Green Sector will be without provisions for the duration of the event. Would the Green Sector like to purchase a blackout token, extension token, or a revamp token? You also have the option of purchasing all three. The cost per token is $1,000 and will be approved and activated upon purchase."
Out of sheer confusion, I called out to Jack. Jack, what the hell is a token and why would the Red Sector use one on us?" With an angry expression on his face, Jack came charging into the kitchen. "The Reds did what? Which token they use on us?" When I told him which token they'd used, he slammed his fist on the counter and yelled for Paula to come down. When she arrived, he told her what was going on. I still didn't understand exactly what was going on, so I had to stop the conversation. Wait, hold up a second. Can one of you please tell me what's happening right now? I don't understand. They explained that someone in the Red Sector was trying to eliminate all of us by cutting our supplies and turning off the lights. Tokens could only be purchased during group events and only by the householder, which in this case was me. When I told them which tokens were available, they wanted to buy them all. Before I agreed, I wanted to know what the tokens did. They told me the revamp token would restore our provisions and electricity. The extension token would add 48 hours to the Red Sector's event, and the blackout token, they didn't have to explain. The downside to using tokens, besides losing money, was the event would get harder for every token used. So if we used all three, that would mean that would make our event 3 times harder than it already was. It took a few minutes to decide. It was a tough choice to make. I was honestly surprised the operator didn't disconnect during our conversation. In the end, we decided to only use 2. The revamp and the blackout. The extension just seemed a little cruel. Once everything was confirmed, we all went to the window and watched the Red Sector go dark.